Welcome, everybody. I'm Eric Stewart, your host for Coffee with Eric Stewart, selling for top dollar. Thanks for joining me. If I could get one of you all to type in, I'm here or I can hear you in the GoToWebinar control panel, that would be great. And that would be just type in those words for me. Let me know that the audio is working fine. Never know these days. So appreciate you doing that now. Thank you. Okay, can somebody please just type in, I can hear you. I want to make sure that I'm being heard. Appreciate it. Just go to the GoToWebinar control panel in the red box and type in, I hear you, or I'm here. Thanks. All right, great. Hey, George, thanks so much. All right, folks, we're going to get started now. Coffee with Eric Stewart. So today I want to cover just a bit about how to sell your home for top dollar. We'll talk also about the nature of the real estate market as I see it today. I've been a real estate agent now for 34 years, and over 3,700 transactions, just crossed that number. Thank God, grateful for that. And in 160 homes sold annually, on average, we're at right about 100 homes under contract, I think 98 so far this year. So grateful for the business that we're getting. I'm a seniors real estate specialist, a Dave Ramsey endorsed local provider, and I also host a weekly radio show since 2004 on 105.9 FM. I'm also the founder of Widow Care, which is a nonprofit to serve widows and widowers here in Maryland, DC, and Virginia. I had memorized the book of Ruth and the book of James back in the day, and I wanted to perform them essentially as a one-man show, and did so at the National Cathedral and some other places, churches and whatnot. And those words that James wrote, that pure religion is to look out for widows and widowers in their distress, and the story of Ruth and Naomi, and how Ruth and Naomi cared for each other in the midst of a trial, really spoke to me. So, and as I got into real estate, worked with a lot of folks who were widows and widowers, I decided to build out Widow Care. Check it out at widowcare.org. We serve 150 to 200 widows each year at widowcare.org, and it's now run by one of the widows who was served by Widow Care when we first began in 2013. So grateful for Lynn Carta. So anyway, a little background on me. I come from a family of physicians, didn't want to be a doctor, developed a practice, developed a team. This is my administrative team. And these are the licensed real estate agents in our group to date. Everybody here is licensed in one place or another, whether it's Maryland, DC, or Virginia. And we're all very focused on giving the best quality of care from the beginning to the end of the sale. So when it comes to selling, we look at licenses as the primary consideration. Are you licensed in a particular jurisdiction? You have to be licensed individually in DC, Virginia, or Maryland. And if you're not, then you can't sell houses in those areas. Now, we sell in Maryland, DC, and Virginia, but we also provide referrals to realtors outside of these states as well. So if you're thinking of moving to Florida, Albuquerque, New Mexico, wherever it might be, we can find a good realtor, refer you to that real estate agent where they are, and hopefully we can help you sell or buy property outside of the area by guiding you to find a good quality realtor. The majority of our homes sell in 10 days or less, currently at 100% of list price. Our fiduciary responsibility is to care. We're obedient. We are accountable and loyal, and we follow full disclosure. So it's really a great organization that we've created, and the word obedience is kind of a funny one, but it does define how I see my relationship with a home seller, which is to guide them and tell them what we're going to do, but then ultimately do what they ask. How do you buy or sell when everybody's looking like this? Well, fortunately, this is shifting. It's no longer going to be relevant, hopefully, over the next, well, even now, we don't see it as much as we did. I was on a flight from Phoenix, Arizona last week. I went to spend a little time with one of my daughters who turned 21, and it was packed both ways. Same thing going to Boston on Monday. I moved one of my daughters out of an apartment up in Boston. So been up and down, perfect. Like, although you wear a mask on the plane, everybody's on the plane. So, and you know, it is what it is. Now things are shifting. I'm glad to see that. I'm seeing the market open up for new listings. The three arcs of the home sale flywheel are timing, condition, and pricing. Today, we're going to skip through this pre-listing process because it's not as relevant now that COVID has been lifting. Instead, I want to focus on the timing of your sale. Now, what I want to cover are four graphs. These four graphs are when are median home prices the highest in any given year. And what I'm going to point out is this very last bar on the far right shows the April settlements, which are at $550,000, okay? $550,000 for April settlements means that's what they settled for in April, which means they went to contract when? In February. The settlements are going to show up here for June and for May are settling way up here closer to 600,000. I mean, it's a big jump. Excuse me. So the key here in timing is to look at when houses settle for the highest. Look at June and May of 2018. Settled for the highest for that year, dropped lower in the summer, a little bit of a pop in the fall, and then rose again in the next spring. Dropped a little bit, rose in the fall a little bit, and then rose for the next spring last year. Dropped some, rose some, probably going to be up here, and then it's probably going to drift a little bit. I'm already seeing a lot more inventory coming on the market even this weekend. It's all of a sudden there's a lot more houses for sale now. The median home price is a consideration. The days on the market is another. How fast are homes selling? So houses sold typically in 10 days or less that settled in May of 18. In May of 19, it was about 8 days or less. In May of 19, it was about the same. In May of this year, it's going to be about the same, about 7 or 8 days in the market. You can't get a whole lot faster on average, primarily because there's some folks like myself who believe that you put a house in the market and you sell it that day. You're making a mistake, folks. You're making a mistake. You're leaving money behind. Gosh, a case in point, I went on a listing appointment with a family, and I recommended $1 million in an asking price for this home. They listened to a broker, a discount broker, and put it on the market for $875. They sold it 2 days on the market. They took an offer 2 days on the market, and if they had followed my advice, they would have sold for at least $1 million and probably more. But in that case, they didn't have the benefit of all the potential interest being realized. Very important not to price your house low and not give it at least a week to consider all potential offers. Anyway, the median days in the market has been dropping. So houses are selling faster for more money. And then the inventory has been dropping solidly for the last really 5 or 6 years. And if I look at the total number of homes sold in the last year, more houses have actually sold in the past year than sold in the previous years, which seems contradictory because the inventory is tight. Inventory is tight, and yet homes are selling for more money. And they're selling faster, and more of them are selling. How is that possible? Because inventory is calculated on a day-to-day basis within a month. So if homes come on the market and sellers take offers too quickly, those houses do sell and settle, and period, end of story. We can see a low inventory trend, and yet more homes can sell. New listings fell 29% in February, steepest decline since May of last year, which was a big drop due to COVID. People weren't putting their houses up for sale in May like they normally would. Median prices shot up almost 4% from last February. In my opinion, that's off. That was really more like 8 to 10%. Pending sales increased in March. Prices were up in March. 72.4% increase in pending sales from last April. Of course, last April we saw nothing, very little selling. I sold, I think, like 4 homes in April of last year because I had some on the market from before COVID, and I represented a buyer and took them out when nobody was on the roads. I mean, it was literally like a Sunday morning at 6 a.m. all day. You remember last year? Median prices were up 8.48% from last April. Majority of the area, though, was up a good bit more than that. Okay, so the timing is about getting on the market within a bull market. We're in the overall market direction is excellent. The timing to get your house up for sale, if you're thinking of selling, let me know. Type into the GoToWebinar control panel when it is you're thinking of selling your home, and let me give you an idea of how to prepare for that here on the webinar today. There's a 6-month preparation and there's a 2-week preparation. They're essentially the same thing. It's just over a longer period of time. We like to have our stager come in. We like to prepare the exterior of a home. Like if you're thinking of next February to sell, We'd like to actually get the outside photos now or sometime this summer or early fall. Okay, and then you'll focus on the decluttering and sorting, final price and marketing preparation. All those things are done before you go live. Once you're on the market, this is where I like to wait at least 6 days to look at offers. Coronavirus brings friction in on the flywheel on condition. Now, it changed some of the way we handle some things. We still like to give our sellers a prescription, a staging prescription is what I like to, yeah, family of doctors, folks, that's where these words come from. Staging prescription, what you should do room by room as you're preparing. You might be a year off, no worries. Now's a good time to be interviewing brokers and decide who you want to handle the sale of your property, okay? So decluttering, you can take stuff with you, give it to your family, sell it, donate it, or throw it away, okay? So if you're going to take stuff with you, fine, you put it in a box. If you're going to give it to the family, it could be heirloom items. Take a picture, shoot a short video, tell a story about the item and the best that you can remember of how you received it when you got it from wherever you got it, okay? And then you could sell some things if you can, you could donate things, you can throw things away. This is what I call the loading zone. It's my term for this area that you could use a bay and a garage for. Loading zone is identified. You want to identify what's going to go where, and the donations and throwaways tend to be at the front of that area. The no method would be just a simple 3-question test. What to ask yourself about anything you own in order to decide to get rid of it. Do you need it? Do you love it? Do you use it? If you get 2 out of 3 yeses, keep it. If you don't, consider letting it go. If the one yes is do you love it, you're going to have a chance here to decide ultimately. This isn't a moral decision that you're making. This is a decision that's practical of where you're moving to, whether you want to continue to carry things through life that maybe you've been carrying through your whole life. I have those touch points just like you do. Things that have no value to anybody else on earth, but to me, wow, they bring me back in a moment in time to something in my life that was important to me. Traditional staging, before and after. Well, you can go through that, or we can do virtual staging. We'll actually scrub the furniture out of a space and add new furniture. We'll also add virtual furniture into a basement space where there's none. We have some really great programs online. It's a difficult process to go through. It takes a lot of extra time, but boy, does it make a difference. And when buyers show up, we have poster boards in those spaces to show how it looks. The exterior staging, the before and after, well, here you go. The difference between having this tree up or not made the difference in the price. We were able to sell for more, showing this, although small, very lovely front porch. Exterior virtual staging, we can take pictures like the one on the left we took and we scrubbed it up and presented an evening picture. The home does back to the west. And so we were able to create what it might look like in the evening. Remember, we're selling the house and not the stuff inside of it. So when you stage a home, you're not changing the house, you're just changing what might be inside of it. Therefore, it's completely appropriate. Coronavirus came in on pricing. It changed our thinking. Now there's 6 considerations: square footage, overall timing, historical comparables, condition, and replacement cost. Looking at the top right at overall market direction, aside from an initial shock to the market where folks were just afraid of what to do, whether they should be outside at all. I was with a friend of mine last week in Phoenix, and he and his wife, her father is dentist, New York City, didn't leave his apartment for 14 months. I'm serious. He built a 1-mile route to walk within his apartment that he would walk twice a day. He did that out of fear. That's an extraordinary example, okay, of how we tended to act as a people differently. That change, we weren't sure how long that was going to affect us, but what it did do is it promoted in homeowners, condo owners' minds, I got to get out of here. If I'm going to be spending my next year living at home, we got to move to the suburbs and find a house that's got a nice porch, it's got a nice office space, whatever it might be. So the factors in price and the market direction, the timing, again, we talked about how good this time is. We're in a bull market, but the timing within a year. So here it is, June. We have an old saying in real estate, when the fireworks go up, the sales tend to come down. We consider square footage of a house, the historical comparables, the condition, the replacement cost, all of these factors. Let me show you an example of, here are 3 kitchens in a neighborhood in Potomac, Maryland. This is your 1970s laminate countertops with laminate, countertops here, cabinets are laminate. Boy, let me try that again. Laminate cabinets, laminate countertops, vinyl flooring, and then stainless steel appliances of a reasonable quality, Samsung, right? Then you jump into this kitchen, which was redone completely, same neighborhood, and would have had the same kind of cabinets as the picture on the left. This was done in cherry, Corian countertops, Sub-Zero fridge, etc. Then we go to this one that was done maybe 5 years ago, which has the cabinets going all the way to the ceiling in this case, a little bit, pendant lights, quartz countertops, higher end appliances, and real hardwood flooring. So I consider and balance out pricing based upon the condition of different rooms within a home. And then the marketing. How do we flood the market with information? We have a 24/7 virtual walkthrough. Let me show you an example of how that works. So notice up on the top right-hand side, we have a floor plan. You'll see this mouse moving magically. Well, that's just a recording here of how a buyer might look at the inside of your home and is able to move within spaces and see what it looks like in that point in a room. Plus, it shows the square footage of a space. So if you're celebrating Shabbat on a Friday night and you need a certain size dining room, before you make the trek out and look at the house, you know how big the room is. If you are a homeschooling family and have 7 kids, you need to know how big the spaces are. Better to give it all up front, right? Just as an example. So regardless of what your needs are, it's better to give the right square footage to whoever might buy the property so that they can decide before they make the trek and before you do cleaning to get your home ready for showing that the home is right for them, at least when it comes to the square footage and the images. Now, let's move to the 3D tour, which is a separate tour that we're doing, and we do this on our listings as well. So this would be 3-dimensional tours of houses within a neighborhood. Now, you'll see as we move through, we've got the desktop example on the right, we've got the mobile version on the left. You can click rooms at the bottom of the screen and go right there, and then see within the space by turning left or right, and we'll give a full 360. And it helps a buyer who's coming in from out of state. I was at an appraisal this morning. Now, let me tell you, this is a home I priced at $1 million. We went under contract 2.5–3 weeks ago at $1,170,000. The buyer's moving in from out of state, didn't see the property. Their real estate agent did a video tour. They're moving in for work in the area, sight unseen. They relied on the 3D tour and the 2D tour and their real estate agent's advice, and they made the winning offer in a multiple contract scenario. So these tours really do have relevance, not only in how many times a home will be looked at and saved, but also enabling buyers to more seriously consider it from out of town. Anybody have any questions so far? We've covered a lot so far, so I want to open this up. If you do, type those into the GoToWebinar control panel and take a look there, and I'll be going. Just type in the question and I'll answer it as we're going through, okay? All right, and actually, let me take also a moment. I asked earlier about when you think you're going to sell. If you wouldn't mind typing in, like when, whether it's 5 years, a year, September of this year, just type in when you're thinking, and I'm gonna make some comments based upon the comments you all are making to me. It helps for us all to engage better even through this, so. And now, listings with a 3D virtual tour receive twice as many page views on Zillow. Also another reason why we like to use it. And they're 50% more often to save properties that have 3D virtual tours than if they didn't have them. We use content to drive exposure. This would be blog content. And this is one of my articles on the left that I've written that has had 27,000 reads. I guess that was a few months ago. It's probably up to 28, 29,000. On the right, we're going to drive through Facebook, interest in your property. So We use targeted online marketing. This is a tool for driving interest through analytic interest. So maybe you've done this before. You've been on the web, you go to Zappos, or you go to a website, Nordstrom, let's say, or a travel site, and you're shopping for something, but you don't buy. And then for whatever number of days after that, you're on the web, you're going to some other page, and then in the middle is a small advertisement for the very thing you're looking at on that previous site. That's done because of cookies on your browser, okay? What happens is we're marketing through a black box that this company has to deliver your information about your home to 10,000 prospective buyers. You know, it may or may not hit them right. And if it does, then they're going to click through, and you'll see on the right-hand side, this is a home on St. Stephen's Church Road that we sold in Crownsville last year. And this property, we had 10,125 views of that property in the first week, and then 22 click-throughs for more information. This is a great way for us to generate greater interest, is by analytically driving the content about your property to prospective purchasers. Directional marketing using signs. We like to put these signs up on Fridays and take them down on Mondays. We don't want to irritate the neighbors by keeping signs up all the time. Okay. Rather, we put them up on Friday, take them down Monday. We have a system for our team to do that. Full color brochures. This is a home on Ginger Tree Court that we sold in Fairfax off Main Street. And this property, again, this brochure went into a sign box in the front, like this one. And then this property, like the one over here, this one had these brochures that we kept resupplying consistently. So this is the radio show, now 17 years on WMAL. I'm on Sunday mornings. Have you ever heard me on WMAL? Anybody here actually come to today's webinar because of hearing about this Coffee with Eric Stewart on WMAL? If you don't mind, type in and let me know you did hear about it there. It's always nice to know that the advertising is what caused someone to join us today. So appreciate that. Oh, George, thanks so much for listening. Anybody else? We'll talk about your property on that show. The quiet listing is a unique approach that we have that we don't highly recommend right now. Unless a property is really packed with stuff, I mean, it's very difficult to get through it, we recommend that you not sell off market. As a rule, it's better to get it on the open market and allow the full expression of demand to jump that price to where it will naturally go to. We'll review offers, buyer credentials, contract terms. I like a large deposit. Buyer makes a deposit on a $500,000 home of $5,000. That's not a lot of risk, right? I want to have at least $25,000 on a $500,000 property. We want to get your top dollar, so we'll analyze the terms, the date of closing, rent back, inspections, conveyances. So let me give you an example of how one of my sellers is working through the home sale. So this is a situation where the seller is not moving until sometime in July, and they would prefer to settle in June, have the cash in their bank account, and just be a renter in their property. Mind you, this $800,000 home, the seller will get all the cash out. It'll go into their investments or bank account to just sit there while they're paying rent for a couple of weeks. Then it's settled. Now they don't have to worry about settlement happening. It's already taken place. And with the settlement already happening, they're able to then just clear out after settlement. The rent back period, what's nice is, especially going through the summertime, because most families are looking to occupy for matriculation purposes. And if that's the case, then they will give you actually through the 3rd or 4th week of August without any difficulty. One of my clients was able to get free rent back. That one I mentioned to you earlier, it's a home sale at $1,170,000, and the seller got free rent back through through August the 2nd, with a July 2nd settlement, August 2nd free rent back for that month. So pretty sweet. We'll analyze all the terms. We'll talk about any of the closing costs, whether they're transfer taxes or other contingencies at that time, and either accept, counter or reject offers. Remember, there's two buyers for every house. The buyer buys the house, the bank comes behind to appraise it. One of the reasons why I went to the appraisal today, even though the buyer in this particular sale had bid up from 1 million to 1,170,000 on their sales price, okay, I wanted to help the buyer, even though I represent the seller and the buyer waives the appraisal contingency. I wanted to help my seller and I wanted to help the buyer, because what I don't want to do is have an appraisal come in low and have even the buyer have to make up more cash out of pocket if we can get the appraisal to come in. For you as a home seller, you don't want to get top dollar and then have to fight an appraiser who comes in and values your property for something less than the sales price. Because if you don't get a waiver of appraisal up front and the appraiser does come in for less than sales price, you're going to face the dilemma of not being able to keep the price that you worked so hard to get when you first came on the market. So, two buyers for every property, the buyer and the bank. I like to meet the appraiser at the house. I like to make sure they have all the content that I'm aware of, all of the comparables I'm aware of, to fight for the sales price so we don't have any issues going to settlement. I had home in McLean listed for 800, sold for 905. It was not worth 905 for an appraiser, and I knew it. The buyer waived the appraisal as a contingency, meaning that they would cure any deficiency between the sale price and the appraised price. And they had $300,000 in the bank. And my home seller was thrilled because they got 905, didn't have to worry about the appraisal. I knew the appraisal was going to come in for less than 905. So I insisted that the buyer come up with a $100,000 deposit that they would put at risk if they weren't to perform at settlement. The property appraised at 840, not the 905 that we sold for. The buyer was very, very miffed at themselves, felt they'd overpaid when just 2 weeks before they were thrilled to beat out 8 other buyers, that they got to put their name on that mailbox and move into that house to live. And then what happened? They became double-minded. So it's very important that we fight for the appraisal and protect your price by getting a large deposit. By getting a $100,000 deposit, they weren't likely to walk away from it. But if I only had 10,000 or 15,000 on that 905 sale price, that buyer would have walked from 10 or 15,000 thinking that they'd paid, again, from 840 to 905, 65K more than they should have. That's the argument that could go through their mind later. Questions on that? Interesting, right? Before you know it, your home will be sold. So I'm going to skip backwards in the conversation to talk about some of the things having to do with the market in general. I want to go back to timing. This is the coffee portion of our conversation, which is where are we going now? What's the market going to be like in the future? When are we going to hit the wall? Okay. So when we are looking at the timing within the area, if I look at this timing chart and I look at the median home price, would you agree, and please type in your answer, would you agree that the prices have been moving in a very steady fashion higher? That even though there are low points each year, there are higher lows and higher highs going forward. So this, and I'm sorry, we'll go back to that. If I were to draw a line for the highs, it would cross this way in a rising fashion, and then it rises a little bit faster here. And what we're going to see that we haven't seen yet is that prices do actually move from a fairly consistent 3 to 4% increase to about a 12% increase this year. And I don't think we're done. I mean, I think the market's going to continue to be very good, albeit we're going to see more inventory and a little less demand going into the summer, which is traditional, and prices will be a little bit flatter and won't be able to achieve the highs that they were getting just weeks ago. That's my prediction for how the summer will play out. We'll see. But in spite of that, we're in a bull market. The days on the market has dropped severely, so houses are selling faster. Is there any indication here that prices are going to change or that the market's going to sell off? I don't think so. How about in inventory? So in inventory, same thing. It's just continued to plummet. We're just over 4,000 homes on the market. There's no reason this won't drop to 3,000 or 2,000. At some point, it will hit an absolute wall of inventory. In 2018, I climbed Mount Rainier, and while I was out in Seattle, I interviewed an agent from a company that no longer exists now. They were purchased by another company, and the agent that I met with had been doing it for a while and interviewed him. At the time, I think there was a total of like 6 or 7 properties in downtown Seattle available. Like, it was obscenely low. There's nothing to say that we can't get to a point where nobody wants to sell because they don't want to miss the upside opportunity of prices screaming higher, right? Why not? Why wouldn't you hold on to an asset that's increasing in value if holding it for another 6 to 8 months means getting another $50,000 to $60,000? Where are you going to get that kind of return? So if I go back in time, if this is the active listings in February of 21, which is just like 4,100 homes, it jumped to about 5,000 in April. It's probably around 6 right now. Okay, fine. So that's still below last year. But look backwards in time to just 2018, when in August and September there were over 10,000. And if I go backwards 3 years, they were over 12 to 13,000. Point is that inventory drops, sales are speeding up, prices are climbing higher, and more houses are selling. If I were to see a reverse in this trend, I would tell you we're facing a top. We're not there yet. I think the market's going to continue to remain strong all year. And I think next year is also going to be an excellent year to sell. And it's very likely the prices will be higher next year than they are this year. So, George, you mentioned that you're going to probably 2023 move. My thinking for you would be, same as I would tell anybody, is next year, let's get an update on where you are in your thinking, talk about the market at that time. I'll guess now the prices will be up 10% on your property next year on top of whatever we're experiencing now, okay? Just a guess. And then 23, we'll know better what we're facing once we get through 22. Even if the market starts to top, George, even if the market starts to act a little bit less bullish and there's more inventory, a little bit less demand, housing prices aren't going up quite as fast. Remember that within any year, there's a perfect time to sell to capture the best price. And there's an anticipation of appreciation that buyers have, especially in the early spring of February, March, and early April. And we can use that to capture that number for you and move you in June according to your plan. So let us know if you want us to come out and give you a market evaluation for that. Okay, so from a coffee with Eric Stewart standpoint, I don't see any reason why prices won't continue to be robust. I think they're going to continue to be strong. So perhaps you have a question or two. Feel free to ask that now. Okay, George asks the following. Should we replace windows this year? How about the front door? George, let me get a little bit more intelligence on the house that you're in. Tell me when the house was built, what kind of windows do you have now? And the front door, same thing. What kind of front door do you have? What's the overall value of your property? What do you think it would sell for in today's market? Give me those 2 pieces of information. I'll give you a clear answer. Anybody else? David asks, what indicators in the single-family house investment market do you use for navigating the next 6 to 9 months? Well, I think the four indicators that I've just gone through, which is the number of homes sold, the speed with which they sell, the the pricing and how pricing are moving, and the inventory in real time are the indicators I use in the single family housing market to determine what's likely to happen over the next 6 to 9 months. The If I go back in time, David, to the 1990 market, I was in the market in 87, very good, prices were jumping. 88, phenomenal year. 89, really good year again. And then by the time we got into, gosh, late summer of 89, you could just tell that the market was different. And really in 90, although we had a very brief spring market in 90, which again, every year is going to have a little spring market, we saw all of a sudden lack of interest, houses were sitting, and prices were too high in general. I remember that summer of 1990, an interesting aside, I was referred to Mabel and Jim Rowley. Jim was the director of the Secret Service when John F. Kennedy was shot. And Jim had worked on the Eisenhower detail in World War II when he secretly went to England to meet with Winston Churchill. And I was referred to Jim, lived in Kensington, Maryland, off of East Bexhill. And Jim and Mabel had had their home on the market for 8 months with another broker and hadn't sold it. And I was able to put that under contract about 3 weeks in. Now, this was a bit of a miracle, folks. And you'll appreciate the humor of the story. Mabel was a smoker, and I mean a 2-pack a day smoker, which we still had a lot of smokers back in 1990. And I was selling houses that, you could see the tar, the nicotine and the tar dripping, literally like dripping down the wall. It was so thick on the walls. And you'd walk in. I remember walking in on listing appointments that were like this, and I walked out like Pigpen. I'd walk out and I just smelled so bad. I had to take stuff to the laundry. I had to go, to the dry cleaners because I smelled so bad from it. It was like walking into a giant smoking filter, right? Okay. Anyway, so Mabel's 2-pack a day smoker. I put the house on the market, and I had had some interesting conversations while I was with them. Obviously, their history was pretty steep, right? They'd been in the government at some pretty key points in time. In fact, one day, this fella showed up at the front door, chauffeur-driven limousine. Guy opens the back door, and I have an appointment with Mabel and Jim at this point. So I don't know who this guy is, but he climbs out of the car, and he's got this kind of dapper English-looking hat, and sure enough, he's maybe 5'2", 5'3" high, and I'm 6'2". And I'm gracious guy. I'm like, after you, sir, of course. He's, thank you very much. And he's got this very nice English accent. Well, as it turns out, this guy shows up at the front door. Jim opens the door, and he's like, and I can't remember his name, was like Nigel or something. Oh, Nigel, it's good to see you. Oh, Jim, it's so good to see you. It's just very lovely, very lovely. And and I'm just standing there, and he's like, oh, hey, Eric, come on in if you don't mind, just have a seat over here. And so I sat in the living room with Jim and Nigel, and I really should look this up. This guy that was there was the one responsible during World War II for Churchill's detail, and Jim Rowley was responsible for Eisenhower's detail. And so these two guys had worked together for these secret meetings during World War II, and I got a chance to sit there in the living room as these two recounted stories of working together. And it was actually a lot like these two curmudgeons on the Muppets. If you remember, these two guys that sit up in the balcony, it's, oh yes, 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 they're just joking and they're mocking each other and laughing and stuff. And they were almost like an old married couple in the sense that Nigel said something like, Jim, do you remember that time when we were in so-and-so? And Jim's like, oh, yes, 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 of course. And they just back and forth without really saying much of anything, but just howling in laughter because they knew exactly what that meant. And you know how a good relationship can get to that point. So it was really a delight. There were other things that they chatted about, but it was fun to be there. So Jim and Mabel were Catholics. They're no longer with us.
And I grew up Presbyterian, so I didn't get the significance of what happened when I went into the kitchen. And I said, and I just put the house under contract. And I said, Mabel, what do you think? You know, I sold the house in 3 weeks. We didn't have to lower the price. And she turns around and she's got a cigarette in her hand. And she's like, you remember Phyllis Diller? She's puffing on that. She says, I know why we sold in 3 weeks. And I thought, wow, okay, you know, here it comes. What is it? What's she going to say? And she said, it's because I buried 2 St. Joseph statues upside down in my front yard. And then she turned back to the sink to doing the dishes. Well, if you don't know why that's important, so there's apparently St. Joseph is the patron saint of real estate. And so what Mabel did was she was referring to, I guess there's a superstition or whatever theory or whatnot. If you were to take a statue of St. Joseph and bury it upside down with the face facing the curb, he'll bless the sale of your home. I mean, believe me, when I found out later what it meant. So when she said I buried 2 of them, you know, she got a double blessing from St. Joseph. So it had nothing to do with me, folks. Okay, it was great. It was a very nice, humbling moment for me. So I did ask, I did ask at one point, I said, so do you mind telling me who shot JFK, right? And I can't tell you what they told me or I'll have to kill you folks. I'm sorry. So anyway, I think the market's going to be great, continuing to go forward. And David, thank you for your question. So David, are there particular zip codes in our Nova? No, the entire tide is rising for all of the boats. George, aluminum original windows, 1965 with added storm windows, wood original front door, squeaks but closes securely, old glass aluminum storm door. Now remember, George's question was about the windows. Do you change out the windows in your house before you sell it? Where do you think the real money is made in windows? If your whole home has been completely tricked out and refinished the bathrooms and the kitchen and whatnot, then doing the windows can be an appropriate step in order to bring the entire integrity of the finishes up to a certain level. Okay. That said, you're not really making money on windows by putting new windows in as much as you are in what you save on a monthly basis from the utility costs. Okay. So it's not necessarily best to do that. David, George, rather, if you wanted to send me pictures that you take with your phone, you can email those to eric@ericstewartgroup.com. I can take a look remotely and tell you if I think it's a good idea. And if you have estimates on the windows, there are some companies that will do windows, especially for a 1960s home. You may want to focus on an inexpensive window just prior to selling if you're thinking to sell for the purpose of trying to get a return. There's a company in Northern Virginia that we refer to that does a vinyl thermal paint window, not vinyl clad aluminum, that's much less expensive than any of the others. It's like 30–40% less than a Thompson Creek, for instance, and they'll last 20 to 25 years. So you may want to consider that. David asks, when do you anticipate the turning point for the 1.98% mortgage rate, November or January? Well, okay, good question. The answer to this goes back to 2009. What happened in 2009 is we saw the entire inventory of real estate underwater. 70% of homes were worth less than the market value across the country. We've gone higher now, I think across the board, than what we were at the heights of but just before the Great Recession. But because of the pandemic, a lot of homeowners went through a period of time where they didn't have the employment that they needed in order to make the mortgage payments, and the lenders made modifications on the mortgages. So imagine that you owed $500,000 and couldn't pay the mortgage. You were not going to be foreclosed on, and the lenders were willing to say, look, you don't have to pay a mortgage for a year. So for 1 year, and we're right there kind of right now coming up on that year, and it could go longer. In other words, the mortgage company has the discretion to decide, hey, you're going to end up paying us On the 500, you'll pay us about $2,500 a month for the next year. We'll just tack on 30,000, okay, $35,000 at the end, which is what 2,500 times 12 months. I'm sorry, 30,000 is in fact what it would be. So $30,000 in interest. Whatever that interest is gets tagged on to the back of the 500, and now instead of owing 500, they owe just about 530,000. Now, $30,000 in current interest rates is about $125 a month more expensive than it would be on a monthly basis just at 500,000. But with the rates having dropped, the government's going to keep those rates low so that the interest rates can absorb the extra cost that those homeowners have in the modifications. And then on top of that, you've now got this rise in prices where anybody that can't get a job could sell their property, get out from underneath it easily. And this is what's going to happen. And so my feeling is we're going to see the next 8 months are going to continue to be very much stable in our interest rate environment. I think that by, let's see, it's June. I'm thinking by April, May of next year, we're going to see interest rates jumping. Now, I'm not saying we won't see rates go from where they are, the 10-year treasury about 1.55, 1.58, go to 2%, but that's not going to make a big difference. It's just going to change interest rates from 3% to 3.38 or 3.5%. So it's not significant. Any big upward swing is going to come because the overall economy is so heated, and I think you're going to see that grow and happen. And even if we saw rates go to 5%, yes, there will be a massive slowing in purchasing power across real estate in many areas, but I don't think it's going to have a significant impact on the DC area because of the lack of supply and the growth of demand where we live right now. Condominium development is going to take off because there's not enough land, and buyers don't want to move an hour away to drive in, or 2 hours away, although they're forced to do so now. So those are my thoughts on that. Questions on that, let me know. Nigel Davenport, was that the guy's name, David? Did you look that up? Nigel Davenport, or you commission president? Oh, wow, so fascinating. So Nigel Hamilton, or the U Commission President Jose Manuel Barroso, urged Britain to embrace Churchill's vision of a United States of Europe, prompting UKIP leader Nigel Farage. Interesting. Okay, I have to do some research. Maybe Nigel was the guy's name. That's what I remember him calling him, but we'll see. Good. Condos are being built as soon as they possibly can because the demand is going to be there. If you're going to move down right now to a condo, or right size, as I like to say, now's a great time to buy a condo because prices are still somewhat suppressed. So take advantage of that. Your housing prices are going to continue to rise. At some point, the condos are going to be such a good value as a comparison. Buyers are going to flood the condo market and come right back in on it. Okay, good. Other questions before we kind of wrap up here? We're getting to the end. I think the market's going to remain strong. I don't see anything to negatively affect our current demand cycle. What other questions do you have for me? Well, it's been a pleasure to be with you. It looks like there are no other questions today. I want to invite you to come back. We'll have another Coffee with Eric Stewart in 2 weeks on the 17th, and I look forward to being with you then. Have a wonderful day, and thank you again for listening to me on WMAL Sunday mornings at 8, and appreciate it. God bless you guys. I'm going to turn on my camera here for just a second, so you and I'll be able to say a quick hi to you guys directly. So here I am in my office. Nice to be here. And so anyway, I want to wish you guys a great day. Thank you again for joining me. And if I can be of any assistance to you personally, please feel free to reach out. Contact us at eric@ericstewartgroup.com. That's my email. Sign up for our webinars at ericstewartgroup.com. Take care and thanks. Oh, I got a question here. For retired couples looking to go into an assisted living facility, they could sell now. Definitely could sell now. Remember, if your assisted living facilities have also been somewhat suppressed because of COVID, so the opportunity to, you don't buy into an assisted living facility. There are just a few cooperatives where you actually own shares in that community, like Maplewood Park Places in Bethesda, or the Glenview is in Naples, Florida, and other places. V, I think, is another one in Arizona. Most places you're putting up a lifestyle fee, so you might put up $800,000 to get an apartment, and then your heirs would get 90% of that back potentially when you sell it or get sold after you've gone. So I think it's a good time to lock in on where you want to go into a retirement community, because I think the prices are very good. Feel free to check that out. If you'd like to talk about downsize and want to look at retirement communities, I'm an expert in all the communities around the DMV. I'm happy to have a chat with you about that. You can reach out to us again, ericstewartgroup.com. Shoot me an email, eric@ericstewartgroup.com, if you want to ask me a question specifically. George, would love to meet you too. Thank you, sir. We'll do that sometime down the road here, okay? And then David, you're welcome. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Pleasure to be with you today. Have an excellent day, and come back anytime. Take care.